Hello, I'm Nick Hobden, partner and head of the employment team at Thomson and Passmore. I'm joined by my senior associate colleague Ashley Matthews to talk about employment tribunal claims. Ashley, I want to ask about this in the context of people often coming to us saying they're thinking about an employment tribunal claim and what should happen before they get that far.
So there are kind of three parts I'd say to this. The first is making sure that you've exhausted the internal processes. For example, bringing a grievance. If you fail to do so, this could result in a reduction later down the line in any compensation. Of course, registering, going through the early conciliation process with ACAS, trying to get a resolution before going down the litigation route. And it's also really important to get that legal advice at that early stage. A lawyer is going to be able to give you advice on not only identifying the legal claims that you could bring, but the prospects of success of those, likely quantum, what's it worth, and also putting that best foot forward during that settlement negotiation in the early conciliation process to hopefully avoid having to go down that route entirely.
Thanks, Ashley. People hear a lot about time limits, strict time limits. How unforgiving are they?
So in the employment tribunal, for most claims, you have 3 months less 1 day from the last incident or the last act complained of, which could be the termination date or the last incident of discrimination, for example. You would have to register with ACAS early conciliation. Once you do that, the clock is stopped for that period. The ACAS conciliation process has now been recently extended to 12 weeks. Once that process comes to an end, you'll get a certificate, and you'll have at least 1 month to bring a claim once you have that certificate. It's very important that you comply with time limits. If you fail to do so, your claims can be struck out.
Thank you. And it's important to stress to people that they have to have got in contact with ACAS first before commencing their claim online, because if they don't do that and they omit to include the reference number of the early conciliation certificate in their employment tribunal claim, then the employment tribunal will reject their claim, and they may have run out of time to start again with the early conciliation process. So it's that important, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Ashley. So is early settlement the best option? Is that the best outcome to pursue?
I mean, of course, it depends on the circumstances in each individual case. But speaking generally, I mean, at the moment where it's taking between 12 and 18 months to get to a final hearing, the process is lengthy, the awards are pretty modest, you don't get your costs at the end of it. So it's very time consuming, it's very stressful. If you can get a reasonable settlement at the outset and avoid having to go down that process and the impact that that's going to have on your life for that period of time, then often it can be a much better outcome for individuals. And it's also worth noting with settlement, I mean, employment tribunals, they have certain things that they are able to award in terms of compensation. But with settlement, you can negotiate non-financial things that are beneficial. I mean, a lot of employees want to have that assurance of what's going to be in the reference, and things like that can be negotiated through a settlement and can be very valuable in terms of future work that you wouldn't get from a successful tribunal claim.
Thank you, Ashley. So let's talk about the form ET1. What's so critical about that form?
So what's so critical about an EC1 is that it's not a draft, it's not a holding document. I think a common misconception is that people put some information in it and think, I'm going to add to this later on. And it's really important to note that you're not able to add later on. That is your claim. And if you want to add later on, you're going to have to make an application to add things into your claim. And there's no guarantee that it's going to be accepted or successful. And if it is successful, you may have the issue of limitation issues in terms of time limits as to when that claim has been amended. So what's really important is that if there are factual allegations and legal claims that you want to rely on for your claim, that these are in that ET1 and your particulars of claim. And that's why it's so important to get that legal advice at an early stage, because they can make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, make sure that that's, so if you're going to invest in legal advice at any stage, making sure that document, which is really going to dictate the rest of how your claim's going to go, make sure that the document is robust and has everything that it needs in it.
Thank you, Ashley. So, Ashley, how do employee claimants go about funding legal advice to pursue employment tribunal claims?
Well, there are a number of different funding options available, and different ones offered by different firms. Some firms will do a no-win, no-fee, but generally there's privately funded, as in paying the fees. But interesting, there's also home contents insurance, and many people don't realise that their home contents insurance policy has legal cover for employment disputes, and this can be a really fundamental way of being able to fund these claims. You can have an indemnity policy, usually something $50,000 or $100,000 towards your claim, and given the fact that you're not going to get those costs back, even if you're successful at the end of it, it can be a really valuable way for an employee to be able to pursue these types of claims.
Thanks, Ashley. So if someone is contemplating bringing an employment tribunal claim, what are the key takeaways in a nutshell?
Well, as I've mentioned, getting that early strategic advice, making sure you know your time limits, you're identifying those the potential claims that you have, exploring funding options to even make it possible to bring an employment tribunal claim, and also exploring settlement as it may be the best outcome for you. So the decisions that you make at that early stage are really going to influence the prospects of the following claim.
Thanks very much, Ashley. So, folks, that gives you a quick rundown of what it takes to bring an employment tribunal claim, the initial process, the relevant document, the factors to consider. I hope that's been helpful. If you are in the position where you're contemplating bringing an employment tribunal claim against your employer, we're here to help, so do reach out to us and discuss your case. We'd be happy to help.